Okay, so now this is, I'm sure, what you've been waiting for is the cure to IBS, and definitely why you probably bought this course. Um, okay, so before I go to exactly what will cure IBS, both for you and what cured myself, I want to talk about what I believe causes IBS, and I've just called it this Patel two-hit hypothesis for IBS. Now, this is based off, if you've studied biology or the sciences, you know of Knudson's cancer two-hit hypothesis. Um, that's been proven to be true now, and it's associated basically with autosomal recessive tumor repressor genes, basically saying that you need two genes or two alleles of a gene to be malfunctional in order to cause cancer, at least for recessive genes or tumor repressor genes. Um, anyway, I just wanted to tell you where I got it from. But so my two hit hypothesis for IBS. So the first hit I believe that you need in order to have IBS is bacterial overgrowth in your intestines or stomach. So what I mean by bacterial overgrowth is bad bacteria. So these are bacteria that are causing um, a disruption in your nervous system in some way, um, like your intestinal nervous system, as well as, they're probably causing gas as well. And that causes most of the symptoms. The altered nervous system with altered muscle contraction causes the constipation. The gas obviously causes the distension, the gas, um, the bloating. And so my evidence for why I believe that that a bacterial overgrowth of bad bacteria is one of the two causes, or one of the two hits causing IBS. Is the first is from my own. So there's a ton of evidence that I've thought about, but I just want to give you three main things to think about. The first is from my own experience. My IBS started shortly after I started eating my mom's frozen food. So I told you in medical school I didn't have time to cook like I did in college. So what I would do is my mom would make a bunch of food, like maybe a month, 2 months supply in Vegas, and she would freeze all of it, and I'd take it in a cooler and I'd put it in my freezer in LA, and I would just defrost and eat it. And that's primarily what I would eat, actually, more than anything else. Um, so what I think happened here is because it was just homemade frozen food is with no preservatives, and sometimes I was eating it 2 months later. Is I think it gave the opportunity for bacteria to colonize some of that food and bad bacteria. And it could have also been related to some of the foods I was eating in college, where I told you I was eating a lot of natural beans and legumes, and I was cooking for the first time, with crock pots and things like that. So I wasn't 100% sure um, how to cook everything, and so there just was a lot of opportunities for bad bacteria to get in my gut. Now you may be saying, well, a lot of people eat frozen foods, and months later, and they don't get IBS, and so that's why there's hit number two, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But I really believe you need both of these hits in order to have IBS. You don't. It's not just the bacteria. It's not the second hit, which is stress, but you really need both. So from my own experience, I can clearly point to a specific, um, I guess, instance where bad bacteria could have entered my system, and I think it was mainly related to those frozen foods I was eating. Um, the second piece of evidence that I believe that really supports the idea that bacterial overgrowth causes IBS is that it's often associated with an interstitial cystitis. Again, what's a cyst in the urinary tract refers to the bladder. Itis means inflammation, so inflammation of the bladder. So it's associated with an inflammation of the bladder. Now, usually, when medical students or people in the medical community think of inflammation, oftentimes you think of a bacterial cause, actually. So the the reason that I think that IBS is associated both with the intestinal symptoms, and then you also have these bladder symptoms of frequent urination, urgent urination, which I really had when I had IBS. So why would the two be connected? Because like in anatomy, the bladder and the intestines aren't really connected in any way. So why do you have both of these symptoms occurring? Well, I think it's because the bad bacteria can actually sort of migrate to the bladder and cause an inflammation in the bladder, which is then causes your urinary urgency or your urinary frequency that you often see with IBS, that I really experienced, and I think a lot of people experience but don't really realize. So, like if you're going to the bathroom every 2 hours and you have IBS symptoms, you probably have an associated interstitial cystitis as well. Um, which again just means inflammation of the bladder, which I believe is due to bacterial overgrowth that has probably transmigrated from your intestines. The third piece of evidence that tells me that it's very highly likely that it could be a bacterial overgrowth is just the increased prevalence in countries like Mexico, Brazil, South Asia, lower socioeconomic countries like like China, India, Pakistan. Um, of course, there's definitely a genetic component that's possible, but I also think that um, food processing isn't as great there, and there's more opportunities for bacteria, especially in hotter climates like this, to grow in the food and for bad bacteria to colonize your intestines and stomach. So again, this is just my hypothesis and theory, but the first hit that I believe that needs to occur for you to get IBS is bacterial overgrowth. Okay, so now I do think there's people out there that have bad bacteria in their gut that don't have all these symptoms of IBS. Now, why don't they have all these symptoms? Well, I think it's because they don't have hit number two, which is stress. So I really think that stress alters your intestinal nervous system. And it's probably way too complex for me to understand, more or less explain. But it alters your intestinal nervous system so that you have these, spasms occurring. You have this altered transit time where you're going to be constipated, or you might have diarrhea. So it's really this nervous system that's sort of been altered. And like I said, the bacteria also can alter your nervous system. So what I think really is when you have stress, right? Your nervous system is actually sort of prone to being more easily messed with, to put it in layman terms. So, like, if I'm stressed, right, like my nerves are very prone, for example, to easily get excited or de excited. And so then, if bacteria come in and then they're affecting all those nerves, um, then now you have full blown IBS because you've got the highly prone nerves from the stress being affected by bacteria as well, right? So I think it's really a combination of the two. So I think, let's say you're not stressed, right? And then you don't have like a nervous system that is very susceptible to an alteration, like from bad bacteria, then you're not going to have IBS. Um, on the flip side, if you just have bad bacteria in your gut, but you're not stressed, you're not. Um, no, wait. So if you're sorry, if you're only stressed and you have a nervous system that's prone to being messed with, but you don't have like a real infiltration of that nervous system that really alters it and messes with it, like those bad bacteria, then you're not going to have IBS. So I really think that with all the theories out there about IBS, it's really a combination of these two. Is that you've got to have both things in order for IBS to occur. So my evidence sort of for stress being the second hit, or second part of the cause of IBS, is my IBS started, my symptoms, the constipation, the bloating, the distension, the intestinal spasms, the cystitis, all of that started in medical school. Like it started right around when medical school started. So medical school was a very stressful time. Yeah, I'm still in medical school. But at the medical school that I went to at USC, we have tests pretty much every 6 weeks, I'd say. So for me, I don't really have an anxiety disorder, but I do worry about tests quite a bit. Like I worry about being able to study all the material, being able to master it all. And so I was always worried about the next test every 6 weeks. And I think that, I didn't really notice that I was stressed, really. I wouldn't say, I'm really stressed right now. It's just something that is sort of looming over you. I always had a test looming over me for every 6 weeks. Um, and so that was pretty much true for the first 2 years of medical school. The way medical school works is the first 2 years you're studying in the books, pretty much just studying and taking tests all the time. And then the last 2 years you're rotating through the hospital and actually working in the hospital. So it's a little bit different. Um, but anyway, so those first 2 years is when I really had the stress, and I think it was related to having those tests all the time and those looming over me. So anyway, the second piece of evidence that stress is the second hit in the cause of IBS is that it's associated with anxiety disorders. So I don't think it's that, generalized anxiety disorder or panic disorder or hypochondriacs are causing IBS in any way. Like, I don't think those diseases cause IBS. I think that all of those diseases cause stress in your life. Like, the person that I know who had panic disorder was very stressed all the time. And that stress can alter your gut nervous system, like I said. And yeah, so it causes stress, right? And so it alters your gut nervous system and then makes it prone to any type of bad bacteria that'll then disrupt it even further. And the third piece of evidence that stress is the second hit of the cause of IBS is that stress can just alter your nervous system in a ton of different ways. I mean, there's a ton of neurotransmitters that I don't know all of the names of, but serotonin, bradykinin, calcitonin, all these things that can be altered by your stress levels. And stress is often related to the hormone cortisol, and cortisol will then affect other neurotransmitters. And it's just this really complex system in the way that stress messes with your nervous system. And one of the ways that it'll manifest is in your intestinal nervous system. So, this is basically my two hit hypothesis that you really need both. You can't just have one. Like, for example, my family, my mom and dad, they freeze food and eat it like a month or two later. Like they're freezing the same food that they made me for medical school, right? And they're fine. They don't have IBS, but I don't think they have the stress part of it as well. So you really need both in order for IBS to happen. And again, you may not have a defined bad food that caused your bacterial overgrowth. For example, like I'm not 100% sure that it was the frozen food that caused my IBS. I just believe that there was some disruption at some point, and when I was either dieting or eating the frozen food, or maybe when I just hit Subway one time, who knows, right? It's just at some point, um, I got bad bacteria in my gut. And so you may not be able to trace it back to one food at one point in time when you had a specific diet or something like that. The second point I want to make is that you may not have defined stress in your life. Like you may not even know that you're stressed. You may be like, I'm very happy. Like in medical school, I was pretty happy. I'm a happy person in general. Like I'm pretty satisfied with my life. Um, I wouldn't say like if someone asked me, how's your mood? I wouldn't say stressed ever. Um, but stress is something that just sort of you may not even really know that's there. Like it was just sort of part of my life in medical school because like of this testing, right? Like obviously testing causes some amount of stress. At least for most people, it causes some amount of stress or anxiety. And so, but you may not even know that you're stressed. Like I wouldn't say that I was stressed before tests. Like I felt pretty prepared most of the time. Like I wasn't like, oh my god, I need to study like all night this night. It's like no, I studied for the last 6 weeks. I'm fine, like. But there's still this sort of baseline low amount of stress that was there that I may not have been able to define at the time, but I can define it now. And so again, you might have stress in your life that you are not defining right now. Like you may say, this is not making any sense. I'm not stressed, but maybe you are, and you just don't really realize it. Okay, so the IBS cure. Um, so the first thing we want to do is fix the first hit, right? And that's the bad bacteria. So I think the medical community is pretty much on track for what needs to be done with the probiotics that they often prescribe, as well as the antibiotics they sometimes subscribe, or not subscribe, prescribe. Um, in any case, though, I think one of the problems, though, and you saw on that slide of the products I purchased, is that almost like 99% of probiotics are in capsule form. So all the probiotics I took on, like I spent over $1,500, probably over $1,000 on probiotics, right? They were all in capsule form. So I really think that it has to be liquid probiotics. I'm not 100% sure. I can't tell you exactly why. Now, the liquid probiotic that I took that solved my IBS was this one here pictured. It's called Nature's Way Primidophilus, if I'm saying that correctly, intensive 10-day program. And it costs about $15 on Amazon. Now, this product literally cured my IBS. It says it's a 10-day program, and I say that, to cure your IBS in 10 days, but literally I wasn't feeling symptoms probably the next day, maybe 2 days after taking this product. Now, what's interesting about Amazon, like I said, like I tried all those products with like 900 reviews with over 4.5 stars and all this. This product only has 3 reviews on Amazon. You can't really go by Amazon reviews as to what products are good all the time. Um, it's just the simplest probiotic, lactobacillus. You'll find this in a ton, like the majority of probiotics that are out there are lactobacillus. Um, but what I wanted to say is that I think the difference is that this is a powder packets that you put into like a water bottle. So I would just put it in a water. You could put it in juice if you don't like the taste or whatever. Um, but yeah, and essentially you'll feel better right away. And I think it's because it's a liquid probiotic, which I'm not sure how many of you guys have tried a liquid probiotic. If you have, at least try this one. It's a $15 try to cure your IBS, and it did cure my IBS for me. I read a little bit about, why maybe um, the liquid probiotic is better than a capsule form. I came across some information uh, that stated that some nutrients, for example, vitamins, are extracted much better in liquid form than capsule form. For example, you can absorb maybe 98% of vitamins in liquid form versus maybe only 3 to 20% um, of vitamins in capsule form. So if we extrapolate that idea to probiotics, perhaps all of those capsules that I was taking and that you're taking, or that you've taken in the past, maybe you're only extracting 3% of those probiotics. Um, and that's not enough to really get rid of that bad bacteria in your gut. Versus if you take this liquid form, and it says here um, on the packaging that you get 100 billion CFU colony forming units, and you're extracting 98%, so 98 billion per packet or whatever. Um, that's a lot of probiotic, and that'll hopefully get rid of the bad bacteria that's in your gut. And I just think that the extraction, for some reason, for me at least, it just absorbed better in my gut, and right away the IBS was gone. And so I think this is going to solve your problem. Um, but again, I don't think that it's the only thing that'll solve your problem. I think, again, IBS is caused by 2 hits. One is the bad bacteria, the second is the stress. So the second part of the cure is you've got to eliminate the stress. Now, for me, I was very lucky in that I took this product right around the end of my second year of medical school. Um, and that's right around when my tests were ending. So, right around when I had to take those tests every 6 weeks, blah, 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 I took this product and I noticed that my IBS was gone. And so I don't know if it was coincidence or if it was just plain luck, but I took this product and the stress was sort of gone because the tests were gone right around the same time. So I do think that you also have to make an effort to eliminate any stress in your life. It's possible that this one product will solve your IBS, but I also think that you need to get rid of any stress. Um, my IBS started at the beginning of these tests when medical school started, and then ended at the end of second year when the test ended. And then I didn't have any IBS throughout my third year of medical school. And I was really worried actually during my first 2 years of medical school that, I would be constipated, I'd be bloated, I'd have distension, I would have gas all the time. And that was going to be a big problem. For example, like if you're in the operating room where you're around six other people, sometimes during procedures for like 8 hours long, that wasn't going to fly. And so I was really worried that that was going to happen in my third year. And I was really blessed that I found this product and that I guess the stress sort of naturally eliminated um, at the same time. And so, anyway, you've got to make an effort to eliminate the stress in your life. If you can't eliminate the stress right away, I would say try a vacation. Um, I remember there was one point during my IBS, during the 2 years that I had IBS, that I didn't really feel a lot of symptoms, and that's when I went on a vacation um, with a few buddies of mine. We went to Hawaii, Waikiki Beach. It was absolutely beautiful. But I got away from medical school. I got away from the tests. I didn't get away from the bad bacteria, so I still had some IBS symptoms, of course. I was still straining somewhat and somewhat constipated, but I felt a lot better. I did feel a lot better on vacation. I think it's because I got rid of stress. I wasn't really checking my phone or my email. So I would try to say go somewhere where you don't have phone or email. So like go to another country if possible, and see if your symptoms get any better. Take this product before you go and see if the combination will work for you. If for some reason you can't take a vacation, you can't eliminate the stress at all, just try to at least take this product and see if it works. It worked for me, it cured my IBS, and I'm sure it'll do it for you as well. You've got to make an effort though to eliminate the stress as well. Okay. And so I just want to give you some really good news is that irritable bowel syndrome is a curable disease. Um, this is something that I think provides a lot of comfort for people, and this is comfort that I didn't have when I was battling IBS. I always thought that IBS was something that's not curable because that's what I read. I read that it's pretty much lifelong. You can control some of the symptoms, but I was never really able to control many of the symptoms. And um, yeah, so I just wanted to provide you with that comfort that it is a curable disease. Try this out. It'll cost you $15. Eliminate the stress, and you should be IBS free within a few days. I don't even think it'll take 10 days. And please let me know, if this worked and how you're doing after, because I really care. Okay, so the conclusion of this program, the good news again is IBS is unlikely to be permanent. There was a 12-year longitudinal study of patients with IBS, and even if they didn't take the liquid probiotic that I recommended on the previous slide, um, still only 55% still reported symptoms. So, over 12 years, only about half people still have symptoms. So, I mean, 12 years is a really long time, though. I mean, I couldn't imagine having IBS for 12 years. I think I would go absolutely insane because it's such a debilitating and frustrating disease to deal with. Um, but I mean, the good news is it's not going to be lifelong for the vast majority of people. And if you try on the thing, the cure on the previous slide, I think you'll find that your IBS goes away right away. People always say that the good news about IBS is that there's no serious harm done. Like it's not associated with cancer. It doesn't really damage your intestines the way that maybe like inflammatory bowel disease does. But having lived with IBS for 2 years, I know that's not really great news because it's so frustrating. Like, who cares if it doesn't affect your intestines? It's affecting your life every single day. Like it's something you're always thinking about and worried about, and you can't get away from. And so, um, I often felt like basically what this lady feels like in this picture is just super frustrated, lonely, worried, anxious, all these emotions. But the good news is that it's not going to be permanent. You're more likely to be cured probably within the next week or two, I'm guessing, with the cure on the previous slide. Um, and so, yeah, I just want to conclude with that. And I wish you the best of luck in curing IBS, which I'm sure will happen soon for you. And I'm sorry you've had to face this disease. You know, I think one thing that I want to do as a physician is always express sympathy or empathy for my patients. And I'm not saying you're my patients, but I think it's important to always, say that you understand and that you're sorry. And in this case, I really do understand the hardships of this disease. And I'm very sorry that you had to deal with this for however long you have had to deal with it. I had to deal with it for 2 years, and it was the longest 2 years of my life. Like, I really despised life almost in a way because every single minute was just consumed by this problem. And so, yeah, I just want to wish you the best of luck and hope that everyone watching this is cured. Um, and yeah, feel free to reach out to me. Thanks.